187 days. That's how long Sandra Ross managed to bury her past in the sleepy border town of Hope Valley, Arizona. She traded her green beret for an apron and built a quiet new life running the town's beloved diner. Locals knew her only as the single mom who worked hard and baked the best apple pie in 3 counties. But when the Los Alconi cartel began eyeing the border for expansion, they saw her diner as just another small business to muscle into. They watched her pour coffee, wipe down tables, and help her teenage daughter with homework. What they didn't see? How every table in that diner was positioned for optimal sightlines. How her kitchen knives weren't just clean. They were arranged with surgical, military precision. How her eyes scanned every customer like a battlefield. The same eyes that once tracked high-value targets across 4 continents. Their first mistake? Thinking they could shake her with threats. Their second? Sending armed men into a building where every exit, angle, and blind spot had been rehearsed in her mind for 8 years. But their final and fatal mistake was threatening her daughter. Because the moment you give a mother with 15 years of elite military training a reason to fight, you learn why some people are better left alone. In Hope Valley, the most dangerous predators aren't the ones who roar. They're the ones who've mastered how to disappear in plain sight. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story hits you, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow, I've got something unforgettable coming. Dawn crept over Hope Valley as Sandra checked the coffee machines for the 3rd time. Every movement had a purpose. Test the equipment, keep her view clear of all entrances. The morning crowd would be rolling in soon with their mix of small-town gossip and border-town worries. The bell above the door jingled. Megan, her daughter, burst in, backpack swinging. "Mom, you won't believe what Tyler saw at the gas station last night." Sandra kept wiping the counter, but her focus sharpened. What kind of trouble is Tyler in now? 3 black SUVs, Sonora plates. Guys inside looked Cartel. You know, flashy suits, gold chains. Sandra didn't flinch. Her face stayed calm, but her mind started piecing together possible scenarios. "Plenty of folks drive up from Mexico, honey. Doesn't make them Cartel." Teresa Jimenez walked in and took her regular spot by the window, same spot every day for 8 years. But today, something was off in her tone. "Sandra, mija," she said softly. "We need to talk about what's happening in town." Before Sandra could answer, Deputy Hayes entered, uniform crisp but his face troubled. He gave her a quiet nod and sat at the counter. "Usual breakfast, Richard?" she asked, already pouring his coffee. "Yeah, and maybe a minute of your time, when you're not slammed." Sandra moved through the diner like a conductor, tending to regulars without ever dropping her awareness. "Doctor." Cho came in for her daily coffee, but instead of heading straight to her clinic, she stayed by the front windows, eyes fixed outside. 3 new patients yesterday," she murmured, as Sandra refilled her cup. None would say what happened. All scared to file a report. Sandra's hand tightened slightly on the pot. She knew that pattern, had seen it in other towns, other war zones. Fear doesn't arrive all at once. It creeps, spreads, until silence becomes the norm. Then Tyler Brooks stormed in, panting. "Mrs. Ross, those SUVs are back, parked right across the street." Sandra turned slowly, calm on the outside. She wiped the counter with casual grace as she looked out the window. 3 black Escalades. Tinted windows way beyond legal. 4 men stepped out, expensive suits, shoulder holsters barely hidden. "Megan," Sandra called evenly, "why don't you help Tyler with his math homework in the back?" "But Mom, now, honey." The bell chimed again. The men entered. Their leader, tall, scar running down one cheek, scanned the room like a wolf in a chicken coop. Sandra had seen that look before, in warlords, in cartel bosses, across 3 continents. "Welcome to Ross's Diner," she said with practiced warmth. "Coffee?" The man gave a thin smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Victor Cruz," he said. "My associates and I are looking to grow our business in the area. Thought maybe we could explore a partnership." The diner went quiet. The regulars stiffened. Even Deputy Hayes shifted slightly on his stool. Sandra gave a tiny shake of her head. "Don't move." "I appreciate the offer, mister." "Cruz," she said calmly, "but I'm not looking for any new business deals." Cruz's smile froze. "Everyone has their price, Mrs. Ross, and times are tough for small business owners like yourself. We could offer—" For 8 years, Sandra Ross lived the lie so well it became second nature. To everyone in Hope Valley, she was just the diner owner with a killer apple pie recipe. But underneath that quiet routine, her mind was always working, calculating threats, watching angles, memorizing faces. Nothing inside her diner was random, not the table placements, not the kitchen setup. Every single detail served a purpose. "My business is doing just fine, thank you," she replied smoothly. Cruz didn't push. He simply placed a business card on the counter. "Think it over. We'll be in touch." And then, as he turned to leave, he glanced at Megan. "Beautiful daughter you have. Would be a real shame if something happened to her." Sandra didn't react, not with her face, but deep inside, something shifted. Something she had locked away long ago. Cruz had just crossed a line, his first mistake. And if he kept going, it would be his last. As the cartel men exited and the chatter slowly returned to the diner, Deputy Hayes made his way to the counter. "If they're threatening you, Sandra, I can step in," he offered quietly. She glanced up. "Richard," he studied her expression. "You know, sometimes I wonder if there's more to you than pancakes and coffee." Sandra just smiled and wiped the counter for the second time in a minute. "I'm just a single mom running a diner." But as she watched those black SUVs disappear down Main Street, her mind was already in motion, game planning, adapting. She had left that life for Megan, buried it, walked away from it. But if the Los Alcone cartel wanted to drag it out of her, they were about to find out why some ghosts are better left undisturbed. That night, Sandra waited until midnight before heading to the edge of town. Her old storage unit looked untouched, but she knew better. Someone had tried to pick the lock. Amateur work, sloppy, rushed. But it still meant one thing: someone was digging. Inside, she checked her emergency stash. Everything was intact: cash, weapons, Idaho documents, items she hoped she'd never touch again. But tonight, she didn't close the unit with the same certainty. She was starting to feel the tide shift. The next morning, the diner buzzed with hushed conversation. No one said it out loud, but fear had crept in overnight. Dave Miller's grocery store had been hit, vandalized, not looted. Just a message. 3 other shops had similar stories. "They're testing the waters," Deputy Hayes muttered, as Sandra slid a plate of eggs in front of him, seeing who folds first. "How many reports?" she asked. "Officially, 2, but I've talked to a dozen shop owners who've had friendly visits. Offers of protection." He met her eyes. "You're not the only one they've approached." Sandra glanced out the window. Another black SUV, same driver, 3rd pass today. Different vehicle, same message: surveillance. Dr. Cho came in next, and even her usually composed presence was off. Her hands trembled as she reached for her coffee. "Rough night?" Sandra asked gently. 3 more patients, broken fingers, bruised ribs. Dr. Cho's voice dropped. "They're going after family now. Soft warnings." Sandra's jaw tensed. She'd seen this exact playbook unfold in war-torn cities most Americans had never heard of. The slow choke, the fear, the breaking down of a town's backbone. Then Megan appeared from the kitchen, frowning at her phone. "Mom, Tyler said 2 guys showed up at his dad's auto shop asking about you. If you have family here, if you're ever alone." Before Sandra could answer, the bell burst open. Teresa Jimenez's grandson ran in, breathless. "Mrs. Ross, they're at Grandma's store." Sandra moved to the window. Across the street, 2 SUVs were parked outside Teresa's small grocery. Inside, Cruz and 2 of his soldiers were already making their move. "Megan," she said calmly, "watch the diner." "But Mom, just watch it." Then she walked out, slow and composed, like she was headed to pick up flour. Her eyes scanned everything: alleyways, rooftops, reflections in parked cars. She didn't forget her old training: Inside the store, Cruz was mid-sentence explaining protection rates to Teresa. The old woman stood tall, but Sandra could see her hand tremble. "Mrs. Jimenez," Sandra called out cheerfully as if nothing was wrong. "I came by to borrow some of that special chili powder for lunch." Cruz turned, irritation behind his smile. "Mrs. Ross, what a surprise. Have you reconsidered our proposal?" Sandra stepped next to Teresa, her tone casual but her eyes hard. "Actually, I wanted to give you some advice. See, Hope Valley has a bit of a tradition. When someone tries to intimidate one of us, they deal with all of us." Cruz narrowed his eyes. "Is that a threat, Mrs. Ross?" "Not at all," she replied, voice even. "Just local history. Ask around about the last crew that tried pushing Teresa. They never found all their trucks." One of Cruz's men visibly stiffened. They'd heard the rumors, just hadn't connected the dots. What they didn't know was that Sandra was the reason behind that unsolved mystery, long before she ever picked up a spatula. Cruz looked at her for a long moment. "We'll continue this discussion later," he said, then turned back. "You have interesting friends, Mrs. Ross." "Just a small town," she replied, watching each other's backs. As they walked out, Teresa gripped Sandra's hand. "Those men, they're not like the usual ones." Sandra didn't answer, because deep down she already knew. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about the town. Sandra Ross stood at the window and watched the black SUVs disappear down the road. "Lock up early today," she told Teresa quietly. "Stay with your daughter's family tonight." Back at the diner, Deputy Hayes was already waiting. "Taking on a cartel alone isn't just dangerous," he said. "It's reckless." "I was just helping a friend," Sandra replied. "Like you helped those truckers 3 years ago?" he pressed. When she stayed silent, he continued. "I've looked into your past. There are gaps, Sandra. Too many." She kept wiping the counter, her expression unreadable. "Single mom. Moved here for a fresh start. Not much to look into." "Maybe," he said, "but I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. I know what trained movement looks like. The way you move, the way you scan a room, that's not civilian muscle memory." He leaned in slightly. "I'm not asking for your story. I just want you to know, when it goes down, and it will, you're not alone." That night after closing, Sandra did one last perimeter check. 3 new surveillance points had popped up. Rooftop shadows. A phone repair van that hadn't budged in hours. They were setting up. In the apartment above the diner, Megan was finishing her homework. "Mom," she asked, "what's really going on? And don't say nothing. I saw your face at Grandma Teresa's shop." Sandra hesitated. She'd worked so hard to keep this life buried. But now, the past wasn't just knocking. It was breaking down the door. "Things are about to get complicated," she admitted. "I need you to trust me. And remember everything I taught you. The exit drills, the safe words." Megan blinked. "That wasn't just paranoid mom stuff, was it?" "No, baby," Sandra said. "It wasn't." She double-checked the locks. "And I need you to pack an emergency bag, just in case." "Are we in danger?" Sandra didn't answer right away. She thought about Cruz's thinly veiled threats, the SUV circling, the pressure mounting like a war drum. "Not yet," she said finally. "But if we are, it's them who should be scared." Later that night, alone in her room, Sandra opened a drawer she swore she'd never touch again. From behind old notebooks, she pulled out a satellite phone. She'd promised herself she'd never use it again, that she was done with that life, but promises have limits. And tonight, Sandra Ross crossed that line. As she dialed a code she hadn't typed in years, one truth echoed in her mind. The Los Halcones cartel thought they were dealing with a diner owner. They were about to meet a hunter who knew how to disappear and how to strike. The next morning, Hope Valley woke up to shattered glass. Not at Sandra's diner, that remained untouched, but everywhere else. Dave's grocery, Mike's hardware, even Dr. Cho's clinic. Every business that had rejected the cartel's offer had been marked. Only Ross's diner stood untouched. Deputy Hayes noticed. Everyone did. Sandra was brewing the morning's first pot of coffee when Teresa rushed in through the back. Her voice trembled. "They're coming," she whispered. "My nephew heard them at the motel. Said something big's going down today. Before Sandra could respond, 3 black SUVs pulled into the diner's parking lot. Victor Cruz stepped out of the lead vehicle. This time, he wasn't playing coy. 6 men followed, heavily armed, tactical gear. These weren't street thugs. These were professionals. "Megan," Sandra called out, her voice perfectly steady. "Take Mrs. Jimenez to the storage room. Help her find those special spices she was asking about." Megan started to protest, but stopped when she saw the look in her mother's eyes. She had only seen it once before, when a drunk driver nearly hit her in the parking lot, and the man found himself face first on the pavement. Cruz entered first. His men fanned out with eerie coordination, watching corners, covering exits. Military training, no doubt. "Mrs. Ross," Cruz said, smiling without warmth. "I trust you've had time to reconsider our generous offer." Sandra calmly wiped the counter. Her movements were deliberate, purposeful. "Still not interested, mister." "Cruz," she said. "Coffee?" One of his men slammed his fist into a table. The few remaining customers jumped. "You don't get it, lady," he growled. "This isn't a negotiation." "Miguel," Cruz warned with a soft voice. "Manners." Then to Sandra, "Perhaps we talk in private." "If you've got something to say," she replied evenly, "you can say it here." Cruz's smile vanished. "Very well," he said coldly. "By the end of today, you'll sign over 51% of this business, or we take everything. And maybe your daughter has a little accident walking home from school." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Sandra placed her cloth down on the counter. Slowly. Precisely. When she looked up, something in her eyes had changed. The warmth was gone, and for the first time, Cruz's men hesitated. "Mr. Cruz," she said, quiet and calm, "I've been polite. I've been professional. But if you threaten my daughter again—" She let the silence finish the sentence for her. Cruz gave a forced laugh, but it cracked at the edges. "You think you can scare us? You know who we are?" "Oh," Sandra said, voice steady as steel. "I know exactly who you are. But the real question is, do you know who I am?" One of the soldiers twitched, hand going under his jacket, too slow. Sandra's arm moved like lightning, grabbed his wrist mid-motion. A snap echoed through the diner as the man stumbled back, his wrist bent at a gruesome angle. 2 more reached for weapons. Too late. Sandra had already moved. The coffee pot flew, shattering mid-air, and chaos exploded. It deflected a punch and snapped forward in the same motion, striking another in the throat. Every move Sandra made was fast, clean, and deliberate. No wasted energy, no hesitation. Victor Cruz took a step back. In less than 10 seconds, 3 of his trained soldiers were on the ground, disarmed, disoriented, and groaning in pain. And Sandra, she was barely winded. She stood in the center of the chaos, her eyes flat and cold, the kind of cold Cruz had only seen in people trained to kill. "Now then," she said quietly, brushing her hands together, "let's talk about your men's little accident. They slipped, of course. These floors get awfully slick when wet." Flashing red and blue lights lit up the window. Deputy Hayes pulled up, patrol car silent but urgent. Cruz glanced between his men and the woman who had just dismantled them without breaking a sweat. "This isn't over!" he hissed. But his voice wasn't just angry anymore. It carried something else now. Fear. Sandra met his glare, calm as ever. "Oh, it's over. You just haven't realized it yet. Take your men and go. Next time, I won't be so gentle." Cruz didn't reply. He just signaled his men, who limped out with bruised pride and busted joints. As the last one disappeared, Deputy Hayes stepped inside and looked around. "Want to tell me what happened here?" Sandra, already picking up the broken coffee pot, didn't miss a beat. "Like I said, they slipped." He looked around, at the overturned chairs, the cracked tile, the splintered table leg. 3 cartel operatives just happened to slip? She gave a small shrug. "Bad luck, I guess." His voice dropped. "I ran your fingerprints. Sandra froze. They came back classified. Military classified. She slowly straightened. Richard, some questions are better left unasked. Maybe. But this is only going to get worse. And if I'm going to back you up, I need to know what we're really up against. From the kitchen, Megan appeared with Teresa. The girl froze as she took in the wreckage. Her eyes flicked from broken furniture to her mom, then to the injured men outside. "Mom, what happened?" Sandra saw the shift, the confusion, the realization in her daughter's eyes that the woman she'd known her whole life might not be the full story. "Later, honey," she said softly. "Right now, go upstairs. Grab your emergency bag. But now." As Megan disappeared, Teresa placed a hand on Sandra's arm. "I've seen men fight like that," she said, "during the revolutions. You're not just a diner owner, are you?" Sandra began setting the chairs back in place with methodical calm. "I'm a mother, protecting her child. That's all anyone needs to know." But in her mind, the clock was ticking. The cartel wouldn't accept what just happened. Not after that humiliation. They'd be back, and next time, they'd bring more. In the apartment above, Sandra could hear Megan moving, gathering her things. 8 years of peace, gone in an instant. But as she wiped blood off the floor, she didn't feel regret. She felt purpose. At 2:47 a.m., the first firebomb came through the diner window. It never hit the ground. Sandra caught it midair, wrapped it in a flame-proof blanket, and snuffed it out before it could spread. Seconds later, 2 more were launched. She was already moving. Smooth, precise. From outside, she heard engines revving. Footsteps. Not Cruz's professionals. These were street-level grunts, local muscle, sloppy and overconfident. "Mom!" Megan's voice echoed from above. "Stay in the safe room," Sandra ordered, firm and commanding. "Follow the protocol. Do not open that door until I say." Through the smoke and shattered glass, she saw them. 4 men approaching with more Molotovs. Their formation was messy, their movements loud. She could have taken them all out in under 10 seconds. But not yet. Not like this. Instead, she activated the sprinkler system. A torrent of water rained down from the ceiling. Flames hissed. The men panicked, slipping, cursing, scrambling back into their vehicles. 5 minutes later, Deputy Hayes arrived again, this time without sirens. "They're testing your defenses," he said grimly, scanning the scorch marks and glass. 3 other shops were hit tonight, all run by people who saw what you did yesterday. "They're isolating me," Sandra replied, "cutting off support." He paused. "You knew they'd hit the clinic next. How? How do you know their playbook?" Sandra didn't answer. "Come on," he said. "I know you were special forces. The way you moved, the control, the precision, that wasn't basic training. Green Berets?" Sandra took a long breath. She looked at him, really looked. She saw a soldier, not just a cop. "You really want to help?" "I was force recon, 2 tours, I can hold my own." Before she could respond, her secure phone buzzed. A message. 1 line. "Motel. Meeting confirmed. Cruz called in heavy weapons. Tonight." Sandra's eyes narrowed. "They'll go for the clinic. Jennifer needs backup. Go. Protect the others." "What about you?" "I'll hold the line here. You're not alone in this." "I know. That's why I need you where they least expect it." As Hayes slipped out, Sandra moved through the diner with military precision. Hidden cameras, pressure sensors, fortified corners. 8 years ago, she built this place as a sanctuary. Tonight, it would become a trap. Sandra's mind was already in full tactical mode, each step calculated, each second accounted for. Upstairs, she found Megan in the safe room, already packed, her phone clutched tightly in both hands. "Tyler says they've got eyes on every road out of town," Megan said, voice tense. "I know," Sandra replied, sweeping the room with one final scan. The defenses were intact, reinforced, hidden. "Honey," she said gently, "we need to talk. About who I was, about who I am." "You were a soldier," Megan said without hesitation. That's why you always noticed everything. Why you made me learn those drills. The safe words. All of it. Sandra knelt in front of her. I did things, she admitted. Important things. To protect people. But that kind of work, it makes enemies. That's why we came here. Why I tried so hard to give you a normal life. But now? She shook her head. They didn't find us, Megan. They found someone they thought was weak. They have no idea who they're dealing with. She took her daughter's shoulders gently, but firmly. Things are about to get intense. I need you to trust me and remember everything I've taught you. Megan's voice was barely a whisper. I'm scared, Mom. Don't be. Fear gets you killed. Awareness keeps you alive. The old mantra came back naturally, as if no time had passed. Stay here, phone on. If anything happens, follow the exit plan. Get to Dr. Cho's. Don't stop, don't look back. Megan managed a small nod, the beginnings of courage forming behind her eyes. I remember the drills. Downstairs, Teresa was waiting at the back door, out of breath. They're moving in weapons, she said. My nephew overheard them. Cruz called in his cleaners. This isn't about you anymore. It's the whole town. They're trying to make an example. How many? Sandra asked. At least 20, maybe more. These aren't street thugs. These are professional soldiers. Sandra's brain was already mapping positions, calculating their moves, seeing their weak points. Get to the clinic. It's our fallback zone. Tell Dr. Cho to prepare for casualties. Teresa hesitated. What about you? Sandra checked her watch. 2 hours till dawn, she said, cold and calm. Plenty of time to remind them why some people retire from combat. Not because they have to, but because they're too damn good at it. Once Teresa was safely away, Sandra went to work. No weapons yet. First came intel. They had spent days studying her, monitoring her habits. What they never saw was that she'd been watching them just as closely. Her phone buzzed. A message from Deputy Hayes. Clinic secured. Standing by. Then another from an unknown number. An old contact. Coordinates received. Cartel shipment confirmed. ETA 410. Her network was still alive, still loyal. Sandra moved silently through the diner, checking traps, toggling defenses, arming systems she'd installed one piece at a time over 8 years. Cruz thought he was staging a show of power. What he was really doing was walking into a battlefield. Every table, every counter, every decorative element was part of a pre-planned kill zone. This diner wasn't just her livelihood, it was a weapon. Sandra Ross hadn't just served in special operations, she trained them. She turned entire environments into traps, and tonight, her home would become the most dangerous place on Earth. The attack began at dawn, exactly when she expected. 3 vehicles blocked the street, 4 more covered alleys and escape routes. Their movement was tight, coordinated, textbook urban warfare. They thought they were executing a show of force. Instead, they were stepping into a tactical nightmare. Mama, target vehicles in position, Megan whispered through the secure radio. She was upstairs in her hidden observation post, just like they'd rehearsed. Sandra had trained her daughter well. The girl could spot surveillance patterns that seasoned operators might miss. Stay hidden, Sandra replied. Count to 100. Then trigger the first sequence. Cruz's men moved in a standard breaching formation, assuming minimal resistance. Their first mistake, thinking the darkened diner was unguarded. Their second, relying on night vision in a space Sandra had spent years customizing, altering lighting, mirrors, heat signatures. The lead team breached the front door, weapons raised, sharp and ready. They found exactly what Sandra wanted them to find. An apparently empty diner, full of potential cover, perfect for a tactical approach. What they didn't realize, those tables, those chairs, were bolted down, positioned for one purpose, to funnel them into choke points, kill zones. Mama, 6 inside, Megan whispered, 4 moving around back, 2 watching the roof. Sandra allowed herself the faintest smile. She was proud. Her daughter had absorbed every lesson. Deputy Hayes' status? She asked over the encrypted channel. Clinic secure. he confirmed. Dr. Cho's prepped. Teresa's crew says no other cartel unit spotted in town. Inside, the lead team was spreading out, moving with confidence. They had no idea they were being watched, recorded, tracked. They didn't know what this diner truly was, but they were about to find out. Sandra had spent 8 years quietly preparing for the day her past would catch up. When the cartel struck Hope Valley, they expected an easy takeover. What they found instead was a battlefield disguised as a diner and a former Special Forces operator who had turned her community into a fortress. Using her training and foresight, Sandra orchestrated a flawless defense. From UV traps to pressure plates and subsonic deterrents, every move the cartel made had already been anticipated. Her daughter Megan, trained in surveillance and response, executed plans with professional calm. What began as a threat against one woman became a town-wide resistance. Cruz, the cartel leader, brought in a specialist, Marcus, a ghost from Sandra's past, the man who once called her by a different name in Damascus. He initiated a psychological war, trying to divide the town with fear and lies, but Sandra countered every tactic. When Marcus escalated to experimental weapons, chemical agents, and infrasound attacks, Sandra activated countermeasures she'd developed precisely to defeat the tools she once helped create. The final phase came when official forces, Black Ops under Project Cleanup, arrived to erase everything: records, resistance, even Hope Valley itself. But Sandra had planned for this too. Non-digital archives, distributed evidence, and exposed truth spread globally, turning public scrutiny into a weapon no authority could silence. One by one, soldiers chose conscience over command. Military discipline gave way to moral awakening. Sandra didn't just stop an invasion, she shattered a system built on secrecy and fear. In the aftermath, Hope Valley became a symbol. Military oversight protocols changed, international communities adopted her model, and Sandra's Diner became a quiet monument to what happens when people stand together for truth. Because Sandra Ross hadn't just prepared for war, she'd prepared to expose it. And some truths, once revealed, can never be buried again.